In a world where growth is glorified and scale is celebrated, very few people are asking the harder questions. Does your business actually work without you? Today's guest has spent more than 2 decades building, scaling, and exiting companies. From the intensity of high-end hospitality to leading tech startups through acquisition, he has learned to see business through a different lens, not just passion projects, not just personal brands, but as operating machines. Doesn't think like a consultant. He thinks as an actual buyer, which means he's asking uncomfortable questions. And if you stepped away tomorrow from your business, what would break? If growth doubled overnight, what would crack? If you never came to the door, what actually remains? The conversation that I'm going to have with today's guest is about transforming a job into a durable asset, about building a business that retains great people, scales cleanly. It does not rely on you being the hero every single day, which I think is a trap so many people fall into.
Welcome to Prime, real conversations in real estate.
So welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you give yourself a little bit of an introduction, let them know who you are, where you're from, and exactly what it is that you do.
Yes. So David Hori, I hail from the distant land of Idaho. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's the state next to Oregon and Washington on the west coast of the U.S. And for the last 10 years, I've been primarily in the world of VC funded startups, although I did a brief stint with a private equity funded startup as well. And God has blessed me tremendously in that of the founders I've had the occasion to work with who had this brilliant vision, and it was validated by some funding from some reputable VCs. 3 of those founders have exited in the last 5 years. And so wild experience, a real compression of learning and scaling over that decade of my life. And then coming out of my third exit, we were acquired by Toyota, got to transition things into a Japan-based company, which was a fascinating experience. I realized that I think I want to build for myself. I've built on other people's visions. Now it's time to build for myself. And so for the last couple of years, my focus has become buying businesses. And really, now I know how hard it is to start a business, to grow it from scratch, even when you have a bucket of other people's money to do it, how risky it is, all that. So buying an existing business and applying what I know to it to scale it really quickly. And along the way, helping some other business owners out with their scaling challenges.
I love how you broke all that down. And when I was thinking about this episode, I just like talking to interesting people. And the heart of it really comes down to people at the end of the day, right? In organizations, and as they're building things, retention is such a big part of that. But I don't think a lot of people think about what the exit of their business looks like. Real estate agents, and a lot of people in my world definitely don't. They don't keep their data clean in their database. They don't know what the value of their business is if they had to sell it tomorrow. They don't really have an exit plan. And I think somebody like you, it's such a unique perspective for you to look at, what's the inherent value of an actual business? I guess, and it may probably be different if it was service-based versus tech versus selling an actual product. So if you're going to come in as an advisor, I guess, on that side of the fence, and you were dealing with a service-based business, what are some things that you think people in our world can do better to create more enterprise value in their actual businesses?
Yeah, enterprise value is going to be driven across the boards by a few big levers. And one of those things is going to be, no surprise, systems and processes. And I think one of the things that service businesses in particular kind of get wrong a lot is that they think that they need to have this very complex process or system that's hyper nuanced to their customer and requires just this purple squirrel person to execute on that process. And the real value is going to be, can we simplify it to a point where an average individual can execute really well and consistently on it? Yes, we still want to create a great experience for that end customer, but it doesn't have to be complicated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, we overcomplicate everything, right? We're doing this right now with our clients on the listing side. So if I have a luxury client, I might value the documentary filmmaking, the listing videos, but they care about the results. So I am almost looking at every dollar we're spending and saying, how can we repurpose the assets that we have and simplify the sales process so that the people looking for that property are getting quick responses to the information that they need. And they don't want paragraphs and a novel to read. They want very concise, simple answers to their questions to really allow them to move to the next stage. And again, like I say this to newer agents all the time, like I see it with brand new agents that come into this business. You ask them for a question, hey, like, does this property have good beach? And they send you a novel and you're like, oh dear God, I'm not even gonna read that. You message somebody that's a veteran at it, I'd be like, actually, yeah, low grade, sandy entry. Even when water levels were high, it was great. That's it. That's my response. And to you, that's a lot more valuable than the super long, complex answer that the other person would send, right?
100%. And that comes through expertise. You know, the longer that you're in the game, you can distinguish signal from noise and then distill that very succinctly.
Yeah. Naval Ravikant does that really well on Twitter. I like to write daily. And when I studied him, he tries to say very complex things in like as few words as possible, sometimes like 3 to 5, which is very, very difficult to get to. So simplify the process if you're in the sales business. I mean, have something that you can sell as your actual operating procedure. What other value would a service-based business want to build in order to really build that value long-term for the business?
The other sneaky one that I think, again, this is a perception issue that I encounter a lot in business owners in the service space, intentionally or unintentionally, position themselves as the product. Mm-hmm. They're selling themselves, their personal brand. They're leveraging their personal credibility. And you have to do that to start. But to create enterprise value, you need the company to stand on its own. Yes, your brand, your personal brand is going to be additive to it, but it can't be what the foundation of your company is built on. And actually being the person that every client expects to work with doesn't transfer. That value does not transfer. And so you're setting the vision, the bar, what we're known for, who we repel. That becomes the value add of you, your brand, etc. But you have to very quickly get away from that expectation that every client's going to work with you, or you're going to personally touch that, delivery of their service or good or whatever that is. That's one that I think gets a lot of people in the service industry, and it's hard for them to wrap their brain around, honestly.
I'm laughing. If you're watching the video podcast, you can see me smiling. If you're listening to the audio, you can. But why I'm laughing is I feel like this is a therapy session for me. Like I'm going through that transition myself, where we have Prime Real Estate, which is our brokerage. Mm-hmm. And then we have our divisions, residential, commercial, agriculture. And then I have my personal brand. And I've felt that way for such a long time, David, where like, I feel like I need to be everywhere. They want to respond from me. They hired me. And I just met with one of my builders, and he was even saying like, he hired the machine, right? He hired the strategy. Sure, he wants me to know that I'm paying attention to the files and everything that's happening and make the adjustments as we go. But it's been more of me being self-critical of myself than necessarily the clients feeling that way, because they bought my leverage, my reach, my team, the training, my standards. So if you were coaching somebody like myself into getting out of the individual day-to-day so I can be a better asset to my clients and allow, say, let's say Prime Commercial, if you were going to separate me, because I was a commercial real estate agent, that's what I started in, from being the face and building an independent silo brand within my organization, how would you coach me to do that?
It starts again with those systems and processes, but what those systems and processes enable is for you to start slowly scaling back in the areas that you don't necessarily add the most value to. You're still going to be involved maybe in every transaction to start, but you're going to be involved at the initial meet and greet. You're going to develop great rapport. You're going to establish credibility, and they see you. Then it goes into the system and process machine where 80% of that work is done by somebody else, whether it's automated or another person or something. And then the last 10% again is you, where you're like coming to the table, you're finished, you're making sure that the maximum value was extracted, or you're adding some insight into the negotiation process and the close process and making sure that everything's got a bow on it at the very end. So you're expending now 10% on the front end, 10% on the back end, but 80% of that transaction is automated. That's a great thing to start working towards as kind of that thin edge of the wedge to start extricating yourself from the day-to-day.
That's such a strategic take. I heard Andy Warhol did that actually with his art, right? Where he would be the inception of the initial idea. They would fabricate 80% of it in one of his factories, and then he would come in and give it his special touch. And it was always his product. And I think that's such a succinct way of saying it. And I think the other thing you touched on was systems and people. Right. With technology and AI, that's such a big part of it. Like I'm working with Manus right now, building some incredible tools that integrate with a lot of the applications that I've been wanting to integrate for a long time. But there's the people aspect of it too, where like when you build trust with people that are leaders in your company and you're in collaboration. I'll give you an example. A file that we're working on for one of my builders. We've got a buyer pretty much right to the finish line, and we are going to do something for the builder to get them to sign that contract on the buy side, that we're doing to really show them that the relationship is there. Talked about it with my agent. We executed. The builder's happy. He feels like he's getting the both of us. Sometimes a leader can feel disconnected when they're not part of those conversations, even though they're part of the strategy meetings. How can they make sure that their clients know that they're doing the work they're doing to stay up to speed as to everything that's happening? And I guess, how can they make sure that they retain that front facing unity when they may not be in every single meeting?
This will come again with deep expertise. It's hard to fake this. It's hard to bake it into a process if you don't have that. But like, one of the things that just comes to mind with very little context on your business is people want to know that your eyeballs have been on it at some level. And so it could be as simple as, after the meeting happens with your team and they deliver this great news and you're sharing this great value add solution where they're feeling like, oh, the relationship's there. You're queued up, or your EA's queued up to send a text from your number that says like, hey, my John and I agreed that this was going to be like create the most value for us, and I hope that it landed well with you. Right. It could be something like that where they're like, oh, he's involved. He like this is cool. Like, that's the little nudge that puts the bow on it. They're like, oh, he does know. And you might have very minimal context on that John gave you the thumbs up action. It's like, hey, we got a plan. Don't worry. I'm going to deliver it. Everybody's going to win big here. And you just be ready with that text message to follow on. And
their office is right behind me, so I can walk over there and give them a hug. That's such a great reminder, though. It is that human touch, right? And I think giving like the decentralized command to your team for them to make decisions based on the principles that you've told them, right? Because there's different relationships in my business. There's earned relationships with people that I'll do stuff for that I won't do for somebody that just called me off a billboard. You do 4 or 5 deals with me, then you're going to get a different level of access and like consultation where I don't necessarily need to be hired immediately because the trust is built there too. And I think you need to be selective too about how much of yourself you're deploying. I guess, is that another question for leaders, when they feel like they're pulled in so many different directions with so many different opportunities and people, how do they, I guess, decide the people that are getting that personal touch versus the complete disconnection of like, nope, you hired Prime Commercial. You're not even going to talk to me, but that's okay. And here's why.
I continually come back to, where are you and your personal touch adding the most value to the outcomes that your business needs to achieve? And there are frameworks to identify that in every person's workflows and product. The other thing, though, is that just because somebody's done 4 or 5 deals with you and have come to expect that you're going to be more personally involved, doesn't mean that that's where you're going to stay forever. Like Keller Williams or something, like there was that expectation at one point where they were involved in everything. Now there's no expectation. It's literally just a name and a brand, right? And like, they've got very high level, competent people executing, and they, by extension of the brand, just have that kind of credibility and clout, and they can go and talk to people off the street and leverage that. So, and
you're with Keller Williams. Like, I know I talked to Gary Keller about it once and the size of his organization. I'm like, how many people do you manage? He said, you can't manage more than 6 people. And those people manage 6 people, and those people manage 6 people. And he's like, the biggest thing is the culture protection. You got to make sure that those 6, they get it. They are a replica of you. And it's when those fall off course that the whole organization can implode, essentially, right?
I 100% agree. And that's where your focus is going to become more and more. It's getting the right people on the team, ensuring the culture's in place. But that's not a one and done thing. That's another mistake that a lot of business owners fall into, is like, got the playbook, got the processes, got the team in place. Now it's set it and forget it. And it's not. It's constant tweaking and iteration and, validating. Yes, this is the signal that we want. No, this is not how we interact with these, this individual. And it's never, you never arrive.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, people think they've made it in business when everything's working fine. I'm like, I've got an insight to tell you, it's never, ever going to be easy. And there's going to be a million problems, but that's business, right? That's the game. Going back to that culture piece, what are some of the things that you've noticed can be culture killers in an organization?
Well, it's really, again, thinking that because you have it right now mean that it'll persist indefinitely.
Mhm.
I was chatting with a business owner, Pat, yesterday, and he said, if you bought my business today, everything would run great for probably 6 months, just autopilot. But then, and you can tell he's done this at a lot of different places. Little things start showing up where the maintenance starts to slip first, and then
Yep.
it's like the little things like that. You're not following the process end to end every single time. You start improvising, and the leader's job is to identify where are we starting to stray from the standard, and then again, your culture is what you incentivize and allow to happen. That's it.
Yeah.
So if you incentivize people that cut corners but still make great sales, guess what? That's where the culture is headed. And if you allow people to every once in a while, it's not that big of a deal if they don't fill out that form. We can always like slip it in at the last second before the deadline. That's going to be
The standard.
perpetuated. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so constantly looking to refine it, and it'll change. The culture that supports you at a certain revenue threshold, 10 million, is not
Sure.
going to be the same culture and the same level of rigor that will support 30 million.
Bro, it's a therapy session for me today. Literally, we're going through this with the sales team. Like I sent them a video of Tom Brady and Daniel Cormier talking about excellence, right? And Tom Brady was saying the only thing that made him different, he wasn't any more skilled, wasn't more connected. He was a very low draft pick. But he's like, I treated practice like the Super Bowl. Like every single time that I showed up, it was so important. And we do a red zone meeting with our team. And we train every Tuesday. And I equate it to jujitsu. Like if we're in there, we're training. If I'm here and I'm giving you everything that I have and you're not asking questions, you're not engaged, and you're not applying the things you're learning, what are we even doing here? Right. And I sent that video to all of my team members and I talked to 2 of them this morning. They loved the message. I'm like, I thought maybe it'd be like too much for them to hear, but it's exactly what you're saying. Because the culture that got us to where we're at now, our clients need to understand that we are raising the bar, and the sales team that they hired take our Tuesday trainings as seriously as when I'm meeting a client at one of their properties to sell it, so that when I meet their client at the property, I am dialed and it's a walk in the park, right? And I think that you mentioning that you're going to have to consistently raise your standards in business as you grow is such a key thing. I guess the question that I would have for that is, what do you see in businesses that don't do that? Like what prevents them from adapting to shifting markets?
A lot of good intentions and probably, anecdotal advice, right? Like, oh, I want my team to know that I'm loyal to them, right? They put in the work. And so I've set the standard, but the sales team isn't, meeting it. Or what I see most often is, and especially in sales, and I'll speak to this with specificity. Salespeople highly motivated to achieve an outcome, and they will work relentlessly to figure out how best to deliver that outcome. And once they find it, it is really difficult to get them to change, because any deviation from that could mess with the consistency that they've come to expect. And you have to, that's something that I think is really important when I'm looking to hire salespeople, is adaptability to new information. And that's why you have these big organizations where like sales is like stuck in the Stone Ages, because they found out, calling for dollars through the yellow pages worked for me. And, it seems just too big of a change to go and do anything else. And you have to look very honestly at, look, is this person coachable? Are they going to adapt or not? It's a business decision, not one that is based on like tenure or other signals. And again, I see this trap where I was like, I'm a business owner that has loyalty. I'm committed to my team, those kinds of things, all to the good, as long as the business outcomes are achieved. And you can still be loyal and a good business owner who takes care of their people. You're just choosing to take care of the people that are going to get you to where you need to go, and cutting that drag, that friction from those top performers in the people that aren't on board, that aren't learning, aren't evolving, and going to ultimately get you to where you need to be. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense, because like you'll see that the top performers will leave if they feel that drag is inconsistent and the standard isn't being met, right? And it's not being enforced. And I also think that, wanting to be a place that to serve everybody, again, it's something that I went through over the years where I want to help everybody, but sometimes not making the vision clear of what's expected, not making it trackable, not having a scorecard in place. You can't really blame them for not hitting your KPIs or doing what's expected of them, because you haven't made it clear. But then once you do make it clear, It's not just about money. It's about saying, this is the ecosystem that we're creating. And if you want to be a part of it, fantastic. This is what it takes. But I think the hardest thing for a leader is when they don't want to be a part of it and they can't take the standards that are set, or it's just not the right ecosystem for them. It's not the life they want to live. Being okay with saying, for the greater good, I think that this is where our story ends. We can maintain a great relationship. And I'm actually doing this out of a place of love because I'm preventing you from growing by keeping you in a place where you just don't want to be. And your actions have shown us that you don't want to be here. Right.
And I'm going to help you transition to something that's better for you. That enables your growth. Absolutely. You know, one of the things too, that I think the intentions in hiring that I've seen leveraged tremendously well. The founders of Zulily, they told everybody, don't get comfortable. They were, this tiny startup for a long time, and they like pioneered a lot of direct to consumer e-commerce type things and drop shipping and all that.
Sure.
One of their core tenets was don't get comfortable. And they literally would switch everybody's desk every, couple of months, just to make sure that people weren't getting, in their groove and comfortable in that space, but they were being exposed to new teams, new people, new environments. And when you set that intention of like, hey, this is the job today, but don't get comfortable. This is temporary. Like we're on a rocket ship, and 3 months from now, this place is going to be unrecognizable, or a year from now, unrecognizable. And if you're not investing in your own growth, if you're not keeping up on the training and implementing it daily, if you're not using AI, unfortunately, I can't bring you with me because your skill set will not support the outcomes I need.
I love everything you just said. Because we've said that for years. Every year, I'm like, by next year, we're going to be unrecognizable to who we were last year. The people that were with us for a season that left, that think they understand our model, couldn't be further from the truth to where we are today. And I was working with one of our marketing team members today, and we were doing some prompt engineering, and I was really showing her how to have a candid conversation with Gemini to get the outcome that she wants. And I was like, listen, you're like an electrician. Like, when you're using tools to fix the light, that is what prompts are for you. So every time you execute it, if you make it a little bit better, imagine where you're going to be in a year, and also being able to identify trends on Instagram that are doing really well to generate leads. Like, this is the job that you're being paid for. I want you to play with it. I want you to own it. You don't have to use the prompt I made. I'd love for her to come back to me in a year being like, look at what I have now. It's 1,000 times better than what I created, because then I can stand in my power, which is high level strategy and vision, generating huge opportunities for the team, clearing laneways for them and letting them execute. Right. And like, I wish I met you 10 years ago, because I feel like we'd be 100 years further ahead than we are right now.
And, you and I share a mentor who, when I read his book, I was just like, gosh, if I'd have just read this book 3 years ago, it would have saved me decades, right? Like literally all this stuff that I learned the hard way through every mistake imaginable in the trenches, under the immense compression of having to grow, or literally like there was a well-dry date on the calendar where we knew we ran out of money. And every time we had to like make another investment, another hire, that date shifted closer. I was like, gosh, this would have saved me months to know this stuff.
Yeah. So shout out Dan Martell. Buy Back Your Time is that book. I think I just gave my last copy that I had in the office to somebody. I've bought that book for so many people. There you go.
I send it to all my friends that are new business owners. Yeah, absolutely.
Bro, so I have two friends, Sam Stout and Mark Hominick, actually UFC legends. And I train with them, been training with them for a super long time, and they run Adrenaline. And I gave them a copy of it because I'm like, man, you guys are artists. You're so good at combat sports. You shouldn't be doing anything but training fighters and focusing on the art of what you do. This book is going to help you get your staff in place to help intake of new members, make sure that people are paying for their memberships, running the organization. And honestly, it speaks to people that are martial artists as much as business owners, as much as real estate agents. Not to mention, I do want to give a shout out to Elite as well for connecting us and doing this podcast. Meg Brady House was on the podcast previously. Shout out to Jen Burton and the entire community. Like, being part of a mentorship community like that, it's so cool. Because I went in yesterday and asked a question about going pro with my content and building personal brand. So I guess having that consistency and the accountability of Elite, what has it meant to you in your growth?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to tell Dan this, but it starts with like, I was wrong, right? And then, like the things he says that I am resistant to, I'm just like, oh gosh, give it a couple weeks, and I'm like, gosh, I totally had it backwards. When I joined, my focus again is buying businesses. And he creates a lot of content for business owners and coaches, I think specifically
For sure.
people that are in the coaching space. And to me, posting online, I was like, this is not the most important thing, Dan. Like, this is not that important in my context. My context is different. Like, it's nuanced. And I started doing the thing, posting, talking to the camera, etc. And now my initial intake conversation with a business owner that's thinking about selling their business has been reduced by like a third, because they're no longer curious about me, and I'm not having to establish credibility every single time as somebody that just reached out to them about their business. In fact, my response rate to all of my cold email outreach to business owners has increased dramatically since doing this. And at first, I couldn't see that ROI, but I'm talking to people and I'm like, well, I'm sure you have some questions, so let me just start this conversation with framing a little bit about me. And they're like, no, we're good. I looked you up on social media. I know everything I need to know about you. What do you need to know about my business? And it's like, that right there sets me miles ahead of so many other potential buyers and things like that. And so I think that's been one of the biggest things where I thought that this was just a total waste of time. And again, a side quest distraction has now, I'm doubling down on it just like you. And I'm like, how can I go pro?
Yeah, it honestly is one of the most insightful things that he said. And again, I've been doing content for over a decade, but to what level? And I think having a group like that really holds you accountable to drive results, it's the most important thing that I can be doing high level, because it attracts opportunities. And everything you just said, I can echo. Like, I've had opportunities that I don't feel like I deserve, just because when people start looking me up, they see the receipts. And by the time they call us to work with us, they've consumed 6 hours of our content. They know what our thoughts are on the market. They know that we're not dishonest people, and I'd rather lose a dishonest client than just gain one. And I'm attracting more of those people. And the people that want to work with sketchy agents, there's lots of them out there, and you can hire somebody else, right? And it attracts more of the right people. But I think having that ecosystem is so much fun, because I mentioned Meg Brady House. I mean, she's a photographer in Hawaii. Like, how would she end up on the Prime People podcast when people think it's just real estate agents? I'm like, you're in M&A and acquisitions, and you buy businesses. I guess the through line I'm trying to get through to people is that we are actually more similar than we are different. And there's lessons to be taken from people like you into their personal lives. And if you take the best of what David taught you in this episode and you apply it to your business, I think you can actually create massive enterprise value. And maybe one day David will be knocking on your door for an acquisition in the future.
Oh, absolutely. And to draw another tie together here with real estate, one of my favorite sources of potential capital now is people that invest in real estate. And the process of underwriting and all of that is very similar. There is so much overlap between investing in real estate and investing in a cash flowing business, the calculations and everything. So when I start talking to real estate investors, there's a familiarity already, but then they can quickly do the math in their head. Like, how many commercial buildings would I have to acquire to get the cash flow of one business?
Of course.
Oh, wow. I know how much effort is involved in that, or how many little multifamily units would get me that kind of cash flow, and how much capital would be required to be deployed there. And so they're becoming one of my favorite sources of potential equity injections in business acquisitions, because they already get it. I don't have to re-explain the underwriting process and why this matters, and how the cash flow does or does not support the investment. So I think there's a ton of overlap between what I do and real estate.
Yeah, there is actually. A light bulb just went off in my head. I mentioned that I started off as a commercial agent. Before that, I did hospitality. So I was in the restaurant industry. So one of my passion projects, I always end up getting a few restaurants a year to sell. And I love selling restaurants because the people, and it's my background. B, there's a real estate aspect that's tied. They either own the asset or they lease it. But our worlds are actually more in line than they are different, because we do a lot in the investment space. And a lot of times when people are like, yeah, I'd love to buy that sushi restaurant you're selling in Grand Bend, Justin, what does that look like? Like, the business acquisition mentality is very similar to the real estate investing side. Just instead of a property manager, you have somebody that's running the actual restaurant and the business. So I think there's a lot of crossovers if you can pay attention to it. And I think that's a big lesson from this episode, is you can take things from other businesses on how to build your business, how to retain people, how to set your standards and enforce them, and how to make sure that you don't get stuck not growing. Because that's, I guess, the last question I have for you would be, like, people sometimes will self-destruct because they're frustrated with the business they have. Dan talks about it in his book, right? They give up, they want to sell, they don't want to grow. And it usually comes from broken systems. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's actually how I stumbled into coaching. Is I was talking to business owners about buying their business, and I'm like, wait a second. Why are you talking to me about selling your business? You have ideas, a profitable business, capital. You're just stuck. And so many business owners I was finding were I've tried everything and I can't break the $3 million revenue threshold. So I guess I'll just sell. Like I've literally tried everything. Did you really try everything, or did you give a half-hearted attempt? Maybe you tried to optimize your way beyond the $3 million ceiling. You can't. You need a new playbook. Or you need to hire somebody that has that expertise and has been there, done that onto your team. Or you need to hire a coach or mentor. There's so many different things that you probably haven't tried. And so my coaching became like, don't sell just because you're stuck. Like, let's talk about what's at the root of that and get you unstuck. Because if you're not burned out, if you're not, like needing to be forced out because of your health or all these other reasons, like it would be a mistake to sell now because all the hard yards are behind you. You're so close. You've got all the expertise. Again, if you know that you're ready, that it's your time, you've got other ventures pulling you away, great. Let's talk about me buying your business. But if you're just doing it because you're stuck, I think that would be a mistake. And for you.
Yeah. And I think like Pete, I've heard this before. Like I've talked to friends, I'm like, man, you built the brand equity, you have the expertise. Tell me the order you would do this in. But it would either be the team that you built to get here is not the team that's going to get you there. Then it's going to be the marketing, like how you're going out and acquiring customers and talent. And then it's simply sales and delivery. So if you were with that person who's stuck at the $3 million and they feel like they want to give up, which would you rebuild first? Would it be the leadership team? Would it be the marketing team? Or would it be the sales and delivery team?
I kind of have a different approach. I would lump all of the team into one bucket. And I'm just, again, looking at the systems and processes and their ability to adopt and leverage those new systems and processes. I find that you very rarely have a company that's well documented and has those things in place that enable them to scale. It's very, very rare that's not somewhere at the foundation. But assuming that they have those, then I look at the team. And there's no particular order in which you need to start with, you got to start with sales or customer service or whatever.
Sure.
Again, what is the current bottleneck? And let's address that. And you're familiar with the theory of constraints. What's coming next? Okay. So right now it's delivery. What happens if suddenly, delivery is no longer the bottleneck? What starts to break down?
What's the next constraint? Yeah,
exactly. And so then that's where I go, I just follow the pain. Where's that going to emerge next?
Yeah. And it's funny because there's an AI project I really love and it like keeps me up on Saturday nights that I'm working on. But I talked to my wife about it the other day. I'm like, that's my geek out time that is kind of throwaway because it's not the most important. It's not our bottleneck. It's not our constraint right now. It's actually our constraint, something very, very simple, but it needs our attention. And once we're done with that, then we move on to the next one. And then maybe we can get on to the AI project. So David, I definitely appreciate you coming on to the show. If there's one takeaway from today, it is this. The difference between a stressful job and a valuable business is the infrastructure, the systems you build, the clarity they create, the trust that you earn, and the roles that you define, and the ego that you actually decide to let go of. You do not build a durable company by working longer hours. You build it by designing something that works without you necessarily at the center of every decision. If this conversation made you uncomfortable, I'm actually very happy to hear that. That means you are thinking like an owner and not just an operator. Thanks again for joining and tuning into the Prime People podcast. Make sure you connect with David. The link to his contacts are below. If you can't find him, message me directly on Instagram. I love being a super connector. And I guess, David, I'll see you back in Elite.
Justin, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man.